So I was in a new large garage, and because once I got in there I had to employ people. Well, as soon as you employ people, you may not work for yourself like I did, but as soon as you employ people you have to start being concerned with their needs. They would come up to you and tell you their problems. They would ask for more money. You would have to think how you could pay them more money. It's a very stressful thing being the owner of a business, especially when you started with no money apart from what you borrowed from the bank, and you're trying to make money to pay the bank, pay the rent now that is 100 times more than what the rent was when you were in that small shed. And yet, all these hours that I spent working, worrying, trying to bring up my first daughter. I had 2 daughters in the end, but anyhow, my first daughter, paying for the mortgage, travelling 17 miles one way, then back. This went on, and I was pleased to say that after some time, I think it was within the first year, I can't really remember, of being in Cambridge, I obtained my orange belt. By then, the world was my oyster as far as Aikido was concerned. I was so in love with the art that I asked my teacher if we could have another night. He had another heart attack, so he was on his 4th heart attack. And he said he was concerned that if he'd done more, it would be rather detrimental to his health. But he said, if you want to train and you can get somebody else to train with you, I'm sure that the judo people will find your slot. We trained regularly on a Thursday evening. I found a slot at the same time on a Tuesday evening. And I said, if anybody wants to train, let's train. At first this was a great idea, but then you get people say, and I don't know if it's just in my instincts of being a boss in my own business, but people would start asking me, what techniques should we do? And then they'd say, well, how do you do this, how do you do that? So slowly I was moulded into a teacher without knowing it at orange belt. This concerned me a lot because nobody wants to make mistakes and give out the wrong information. And we were having quite a small group of people. I can't remember how many exactly. So I asked my teacher if he could get me an introduction to go to London, where I could get taught by the very best in the UK. We arranged that I could go on a Sunday morning. I was an orange belt, so I couldn't go on a Monday evening, because on a Monday evening it was for first cues and above, where they would practice weapons. And in those days, unless you was a first cue, you weren't allowed to do Ken or Joe. And now, looking back, I can understand why. So every Sunday morning I would not go to my work, where I used to work from 10 till 3, as I said. I would sacrifice that money and opening to go to London, where I would be taught. I would do this with a friend, and my friend, who was much quicker and better than me at picking things up. I always remember thinking, how can he get things so quick when it takes me so long? At the time I didn't think that it was my dyslexic mind, the way it sees things, but I'm just a very, very slow learner. But once it's in, it's in. So every Sunday, I can't remember if he would come to me or I would go to him, but we would go to London, Hillingdon, and we would go in the sun, the snow, the fog. Sometimes you couldn't see the cars in front of you, but the passion of going and training with the best in the UK and all those high grades, let's say there might be 20 people, perhaps more on the tatami, and you could, at an orange belt, you could train with blue belts. Well, the black belts were frightening because they'd be so hard. They would make you feel like you're going through a machine of being minced up and spat out at the end of it. So I would normally just work with perhaps green belts and blue belts, third cues and second cues, because to me they felt like iron bars they had for arms. But my friend couldn't always make it, but I would have to go. Year after year after year, I kept going and going. I was tested by them up to first cue. And at this point, my teacher had just had his 8th heart attack. And he said to me when he come out of hospital that he decided that he wasn't able to teach any longer and he'd got to make a decision. But the club was going well. It had a good number of students. I can't remember again how many, but it had a good number of students. Aikido in those days was very popular and going well. Now my partner, my friend, who was the same grade as me, he was just the model student. I mean, there's nothing, he was smooth, he was better than me in every way. And I was quite surprised because I was just happy to be a student, loving my Aikido. So one day when he was about to hand over the club, he was presenting me with my brown belt. I can't remember if my friend had already got his brown belt, but he was superb and I was the clumsy one of the two. Even though I'd attended more seminars than he did, but I could pick it up from a seminar, go back, show him, and within a few minutes he would have the technique better than I had it, and him not being the one on the seminar. I went out the front to collect my brown belt because it was going to be presented to me, and he said, I'm not only giving you the brown belt, sorry I'm choking a little bit here, but I'm going to hand you over the club. And he wanted me to take on the Cambridge Aikido Club. Sorry, I didn't know this was going to affect me like this. I was absolutely astounded. I didn't want to be the teacher. And after, because you're not allowed to say it on the mat, we had a very strict regime in those days of martialness. But afterwards, I asked him, I personally met him off the mat when he was at work one day, and I asked him why he didn't give it to my friend, who should really be the teacher. He just said, I've chosen you. Sorry. Deep breaths. I went to London. I kept going to London for my first Dan I passed. I trained and trained, and in 1982 I decided that I was a second Dan. I'd made my first Dan. I received my second Dan from the hut in Hillingdon again, from the same people. But they were not using me so much as uke anymore. I was getting quite concerned. I thought I'd upset them. I started going to seminars every month. Before that I'd been going to seminars anyhow. I found that people didn't really like me. You know, often show you my hands, they're very big hands. But I was just born a very strong, powerful person. Wherever I went, I could stop people from doing the techniques on me. I didn't realise, but I asked my best friend in London, who I'd made more friends by then, why don't senseis use me anymore? The answer was, you're making them look bad. They can't move you, Tony. Don't you realise? Well, having the mind of a child, no, I didn't realise. I was being honest. If they say grab me, then I grab them. I've always been like this person. If somebody asks me to give them my word, I give them my word. To me, it's not a big deal. You know, just be honest. Of course, over the years I've lied, I've had to run a business, I had to lie at times, and for what I felt was my benefit, I had to keep my ego polished. So I'd become second Dan, I would stop being used by my senses. I thought, this is time, I need to find a sensei. I won't mention the names, but because most of them are past now. But I searched out Europe, I searched out the seminars. By this time, many Japanese top senseis, 7th Dans, 8th Dans, 6th Dans, they were all coming to the UK because Aikido had branched out, and there were many, many different schools by the time I'd got from that orange belt days to the second Dan black belt days. Many, many organisations had started, thousands of people were training in Aikido in the UK and throughout Europe. France was the biggest amount of practitioners outside of Japan doing Aikido. So I went there as well. Wherever I went, I could not find what I wanted. And that is people to either throw me easily. If I attack 100%, then I'm giving myself 100%. Why couldn't they do their part of the deal, we'll say? But they couldn't. So I was lost and not knowing what to do because I couldn't find any master in the UK, Japanese master as well. And as the Japanese masters came over, I saw about 6 of them from around the world, some from America, some directly from Japan. We had one in the UK that was a permanent residence. I will mention the name here. I never trained with Sensei Chiba. I think if I had done, apart from him frightening me to death on his films, I think I would have perhaps followed him because I know that he would have been able to carry out his Aikido on me, being such a powerful master. Anyhow, I will continue this story because it's long. I hope you're prepared in stages to travel this journey with me, and I apologise for the hiccup when I got emotional. But we are human beings, even the hardest of masters. I'll carry on shortly.